Namaste, everybody, and welcome to Vasa's Wisdom Wednesdays with your host, Jeffrey Armstrong. Jeffrey is the founder of Vasa, Vedic Academy of Science and Arts. He's also co-chair of VFA, Vedic Friends Association, and a scholar on the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. As a yoga practitioner for the last 50 years, he retired from corporate life 23 years ago and has been teaching full-time on behalf of the Vedic Sanatan Dharma. He's a best-selling author, philosopher, poet, Vedic astrologer, and if you go to the About section on his webpage, jeffreyarmstrong.com, you can learn more about him. He's got a great blog there. You can listen to his poetry and his YouTube channel, Jeffrey Armstrong, and there are a lot of classes on his website that you can learn from and astrology and or Vedic wisdom. Our special guest today is Eve Mendoza. We're very excited to have you on, Eve. Eve is a serious student of astrology for over the last 20 years. In 1994, she met her first teacher who led her to Jyotish, and she continued her studies in India, where she devoted the next 10 years to serving her teacher and assisting in the everyday maintenance of a charitable trust. We met Eve at the Vedic Astrology Conference in Sedona a few years ago, and we've enjoyed her company so much that we've stayed in touch with her. Her specialty is the Nakshatras and talking about the male-female divine, and today that's what our topic is going to be. So I'm very excited that Jeffrey and Eve will have a beautiful conversation that we can all listen into. So thank you, Eve.
Thank you.
You're so very welcome. We ready?
Yeah.
All right. So everyone, we're going to have a very special conversation today. So I'd like to lead into it by, first of all, saying to you, in the introduction you just heard, you should hear Eve and Kavindra Rishi, Jeffrey Armstrong, have 3 PhDs that they've been working on for the last 20 to 50 years of their life. And the one they call Jyotish, or Vedic astrology, is advanced human psychology. So if you were with 2 therapists who had talked to thousands of people and spent a good part of their life studying psychology, that would be the same as saying Vedic astrologer. And then if they were also studying the library of Vedic knowledge, then they would have absorbed this ancient and wide-ranging philosophy. And of course, staying in touch with all of that knowledge and living it as a lifestyle, as both of us do, is a yoga. It is various kinds of yoga being practiced all day long, every day, at the beginning and end of the day, and all day long during the day. So both of us live that lifestyle, as does Sandi, and I know many of you do. So with this, we're going to talk about a subject that, as I'd like to say, is a missing vitamin in our civilization. When I say something like that, I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just being a scientist. I'm being a psychologist. So the vitamin that is missing in Western civilization is a proper understanding of both male and female divine in a way that can be seen, understood tangibly and logically, lived with, and go deeper into this psychology of the masculine and feminine and its roots in the ultimate source of everything is one of the most advanced subjects in Vedic teachings, and it is a missing vitamin in our culture. So let's just say, Eve and I are diet specialists, and everyone is missing a particular vitamin and doesn't even know it's hurting them. They may just think of their mother and father when they think of male and female. Oops, that could be a mistake. They may have watched movies and seen pretend versions of the masculine and feminine. But if there's a single subject that has been abused, misused, and misunderstood for the last at least 3,000 years of human history, it is the subject that Eve and I are going to try to present to you today. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Sandi, and Eve and I will go back and forth talking about various aspects of this subject.
Eve, I just wanted to ask you a quick question to start, just to go back to the astrology. Your teacher in India Was that an astrology teacher, or did you learn a broader range of topics? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your time in India?
Sure. So I was mainly serving just through Hindi and English correspondence, the everyday running of a charitable trust, feeding the underprivileged communities in Ahmednagar, India. And my teacher was kind of, is very hidden. What he knew is very hidden. He didn't put it on the surface. And he was all of that. He knew Jyotish inside and out. He knew these things, but there was no show. Mm-hmm. And so I got a lot of intimate time with him when he became more ill, and I cared for him. As you know, my duties slowly started moving into that more of a nurse. And so my evenings were often with him. He couldn't get up at some point to even go to the restroom to relieve himself by himself. I mean, all of us had to help. He never had a moment alone. So this was a 24-hour service. And through that, not only do you learn in silence what you can never find in a book, even by serving someone like that coffee or their food, or taking care of their feet because they're diabetic. I feel so fortunate. I was always the one able to do that kind of care. I think more was transmitted to me in silence sometimes than through the actual vocalization or the verbalization of anything. With that said, if I put any question before him, he could answer me like that.
It's always sweet, the nuggets that the close students get when the teacher just drops them down when you least expect them.
He was very interested in character. Mm-hmm. He was much less interested in giving anything, what would you call it? It was somewhat scientific. Vedic sciences are, people say science now. These are juvenile sciences. They've been around only for how many hundreds of years? And so these are, the Vedic sciences are the real thing. And he was less likely to give out anything on those until he saw certain traits in character. And so some of that was, it just would seem non-intuitive to someone. If you're spiritually ambitious, you won't make it with a person like that, because so much seems like nonsense what you're doing. You know,
wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderfully said, Eve. There's a secret language that is being spoken all around us by nature, just by existing. You could say, there's a saying actually, that matter itself is the dictionary of spirit. And if you look up the word with the right approach, the word reveals itself to you in a certain sort of way. All the mysteries are right in front of us. But a guru is someone who guides you to spend the time both serving and paying attention in a unique way that is learned. It's a learned skill. And if you may have it more naturally from your previous life, but it's a necessity that the unspoken intuitive, guided by the spoken and explained, it is eventually the part of us that can't be seen who is the listener and who is the doer. And this vehicle that we're in has trained us to only see the surface. So as Eve pointed out, all great teachers, by various means, take the student on a journey into the otherwise unseen and unknowable. And the service to the teacher is what causes the complete connection, so that the transmission goes from heart to heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes, beautifully said.
So each of us who's learned the Vedic knowledge has some kind of seva background, who's learned it at this level, where we gave everything to our teacher for a period of time, so that we know what that feels like. And more than anything else, the yogic knowledge is not about us. It's about what we do once we know who we really are. And it's about how we behave as our true self. So the term for this is acharya. You hear the word kar in there. It means moving in a certain way. So Eve, let's tie this into the beginning of the conversation. How did you, just a little bit about your journey of discovery for the implications of the missing vitamin of the feminine divine?
That's a journey. So when I first started out, even before I met my teacher, I had just been extremely drawn to mantras of Lord Shiva, which I was teaching myself. And you quickly discover I would spend all night just teaching myself these mantras, and I wanted to be able to write and read the Sanskrit. And you quickly discover that Lord Shiva is you cannot separate him from Shakti. If you actually really want to know Shiva, you have to, you cannot separate the two. And so she made herself known to me, whether I wanted it or not. You realize that, I think Shankaracharya, speaking of acharyas, he had a very beautiful way of expressing this after he was crippled by her. Because if you know his story, he was, just a worshiper of the absolute. And he would not acknowledge the medium, the measurement, that which gives you and defines a purpose. Shakti is purpose. Without her, Vishnu would not wake up. There would be nothing to rescue. There'd be nothing to do. Without her, Shiva would not know himself. It would be asleep. She wakes you up. So
you're here.
She is that which wakes you up in stages. She's all the various stages. She's the gunas. We see this even in Brihad or Shastra. So we see that Lord Vishnu works with the three Shaktis, Shri Shakti, Bhu Shakti, and Nil Shakti. And without his interaction with them, there's no experience. We can't have any experience. There's only that infinite, if you will, some kind of the sleep state. It's hard to explain, right? This is higher Vedantic philosophy. So until one experiences it anyway, it's nothing. So yeah. Even the experience we're having right now, the beauty of our faces, the beauty, the tone of our voices, everything that we're seeing, it is all Shakti. Whether we call it beautiful or ugly, she's in all of it. Mm-hmm. Every single piece of it. And this is illumined by beautiful works that some of the tantras that have been exploited, I have to say. Please forgive me, I don't mean this offensive to people. This dwelling on only one feature in the Western cultures we love to do for some reason. You'd think we'd get a little bored. You'd think we'd get a little bit curious about.
This is the vitamin deficient condition.
Yes, and that's the only place we're getting the energization and the tenderness. So many of us are without that tenderness. So much of this world is a struggle for survival. And I think the tenderness, it's easy to surrender to a bite of sweet food or the touch or the beautiful face of a woman, or instead of reaching past that, where is that longing for that comfort even coming from in the first place, that rest, that purpose, that energization?
Well said, Eve. And this is what all the great acharyas and teachers and gurus of India have alluded to, taught directly in various ways depending upon the circumstances. This is important. Never think that you know you know how much an acharya or a great guru knew. Always think that they taught according to the time and circumstances in which they lived, just giving out a fraction of what they really knew. So you stay respectful of everyone's gurus and teachers. But just imagine that the vitamin I was talking about, another way to say the same thing is that all of us are more or less orphaned children who never really got to know their parents.
Yes.
And therefore, we're all dysfunctional in various ways that would naturally arise from not having a cosmic role model for the physical maleness and femaleness that we're dressed in. And so missing that, we have been in various stages of compulsion, dysfunction, and worse in relationship to this tremendous force of attraction that is what binds the entire universe together, what Eve was talking about. Whether it's Vishnu, Lakshmi, Shiva, Durga, Kali, or whether it's Saraswati, Brahma, or its final discussion in Ram, Sita, Krishna, Radha, all of this is an explanation of the beauty that we're surrounded by. Would you elaborate on that a little, Eve, on the relationship of that beauty to what we're trying to understand?
That might be above me, but I'll attempt.
Might be above all of us.
But I mean, that's a very genuine statement. Entire experience is constructed of opposites. This dance of opposites, lightness and light and darkness. I mean, which is solid, which is not solid. You know, you have that which is contained and that which is the container. I mean, you have opposites dancing everywhere. We see this in molecular structures. We see this in chemical compounds.
Time and space.
Yes, time and space. And in the study of Jyotish, you know, we really we're illumining each measurement of that time and how it interacts with these opposite qualities, always dancing with each other. Even what we call misfortune is that. It's still perfect. That which we're calling imperfect, not, you know, unformed, is also perfect. So when we're looking at all of life, we have no basis of experience without witnessing that dance. I do feel that there's a place, even specifically in spiritual communities, where there has become a little bit of a vilification of certain aspects of those opposites, right? Whenever we're shutting ourselves off from something through fear, let's say the terrible side of Shakti, the terrible side of time, all of those things, they are all Shiv and Shakti. They're all awareness, and that energy which is born from that awareness, that friction that is in a dance. So I hope that answers your question. It's just all pervading and it's all perfect.
Yes,
It's almost
a
like
cosmic question doesn't get a short answer.
No.
Go ahead, Sandi. Sandi was going to
No,
say
I was just
something.
going to say it's like if we deny the feminine in our communities and say don't go there, it's a distraction or it's evil or whatever the frame you want to put around it, it really alleviates the responsibility for the man to actually step up and manage his own sexual energies surrounded by beautiful women.
That's beautifully said. I mean, you can look at history and see just like the oppression of the menstrual cycle. Think about the things that are intrinsically female and yet they are made somehow either frightening or unclean or I mean, it's almost as if we don't want to deal with that side. Just like you can see a billboard of a woman in a bikini seducing you, but if a woman pulls out her breast to nurse her child, someone complains about it on a train, or the menstruation of it being considered this word dirty. Where in the worship of the Mahavidyas, it's actually very sacred, and it's a sacred time of the month. And
Each time being a mystery.
Yes, the waxing and waning of the moon. I mean, look at this. Look at the entire Panchanga. So we have the dance of the sun and the moon is making up so much of this, right? So
the word Panchanga means the 5 sources of time energy. Go ahead.
Yes, and we have so many yogas in Jyotish that are formed off of just the relationship of the sun and the moon and their angle from each other. And this whole waxing and waning process, the female's body is even tied into in a very intimate way. I mean, our cycles are ruled, if you will, by the moon. And our bodies, a female's body is literally the duplicate of the earth.
So now,
this brings us to the important Vedic maxim, which we hear echoed in esoteric philosophy in the West. Yata pinde tata brahmande. As above, so below. But somehow the images of this and the understanding of that relationship, that's the missing vitamin I was talking about. And it's said throughout every indigenous culture in the world, the female is the keeper of those secrets. Please continue.
Wow, that's beautiful. I feel that there's an old saying, and I believe it's in Celtic traditions, and I also know that it is in indigenous America traditions as well, that the man penetrates with the body and the female penetrates with the heart. So there is a responsibility in the female intelligence to lead into that realm of mysteries. There is a responsibility there. And without her knowing herself, and unfortunately, we don't have many tools for that, because unfortunately, what I'd like to say this, the brand of empowerment that is blooming throughout our civilization at the moment is going to have this is my personal humble opinion, is going to have the opposite effect of what they are aiming for. This empowerment of women by us having to become men.
Yeah, wrong way to go.
It is stripping us of the power of the night, the power of mystery, the power of the stars. We are the night. And why do we need to become the day in order to have a power? We are losing ourselves. And we continue to emasculate our men. We continue to be misinformed about what our bodies, what we even are embodied in. We have no tools of leadership as females anymore.
And if I could add to that its companion piece, those in male bodies are being prepared to go off and be violent and fight somebody's war.
Yes.
And so the sensitivity in them that would allow them to represent the masculine energy and the correct relationship to the feminine, more refined energy, and to see that feminine as their teacher, not as a problem, not as too complicated, but the embodiment of everything. It's the reverence for one another that sadly has been stripped away, hasn't it?
It's kind of like we're teaching our boys to do computer games of war games, and nobody's sending either gender to relationship schools.
And the ultimate relationships beyond How
Yeah.
can we really have role models without them? Yes.
Well, if there's no female deity, no female god, how can we possibly even imagine to hold the feminine in esteem? It's sort of a,
Right.
she's not quite up there.
She almost exists.
And may I say here too that this
Please
is
do.
not always based on body, because people are increasingly, I feel this it's sensitive to the fact that this play of opposites has to be male, female, physical body. That may be some kind of natural design. We shouldn't say it's not. It is a biological design. However, that doesn't mean that it won't play out other ways. Okay, so same-sex relationships, that's important to acknowledge. So it doesn't, I don't want anyone feeling as if this Shiv and Shakti is not playing through just because the medium, the body, is not the same, the opposite.
This is where an astrology is so important, because both of you see the dominant planet of male or female planets in a chart, and it rules the destiny of that entity this lifetime.
Yes, definitely. There's a sensitivity around that. I'm also very sensitive to how we're being exploited. So there is a part of this that is, there is a part of pushing women into a certain role that is propaganda 100%. Then there is another part that is liberation, and that does need to happen. So this is a very touchy subject.
Mm-hmm.
It's very delicate. So I don't want anyone to feel disrespected right now, because I'm not saying that all females should follow this uniformed, prescriptive thing. Shakti, if you read about Shakti, she is literally everything.
Well, this is a very important point to look at from two sides. The one, I'm so glad you brought this sensitivity up first. And the second is, so what is the medicine that keeps us from being trapped into identifying as our gender in the physical body we're in? It is an inability to talk about ourselves as the Atma. We need not the word soul, we need the true Sanskrit word for the atomic self. Atomic comes from Atma in Sanskrit, and it means uncuttable, atome. You can't cut it, you can't kill it. It is not the body it's in. The body it's in is just a construct that has come about by cause and effect within matter. We should accept all bodies as you said, natural. But the Atma is how we save ourselves from being dragged back into being that body, which is the favorite trick. Now here's an amazing word that's important for this, of advertising. Advertising starts out by compromising your identity. So the word advertising comes from the Sanskrit vritti.
Right.
Yogas chit, vritti nirodha. So the two components of manipulating and twisting us are to remove our sense that we're the Atma, and then twist our concept of material self into something that makes us the buyers of a product, that commercializes us.
It does. It turns us into consumers.
To products and consumers.
And we need to be careful of the information we consume, actually, just as much as we need to be careful of the food we consume. And some of what we consume, we already have, so many thoughts, right? It's very easy to inspire a thought to be bigger than it was in the first place by embellishing it. So I do feel very, even when I was speaking to with emasculation of men in partnerships, this can happen with two women. The masculine partner can be emasculated. So this is very important. There's a defeminization as well. There's the, this is happening for those of us who do work with people intimately, and I have for 20 years. I mean, mainly for 10, I would say, more than anything, after my teacher requested me to. But that experience gave me insight into what we do in partnerships that is so incredibly destructive. And so much of it does come from an outside source of feeding that many of us are unaware of. Because we
This is
see
why I,
it daily. You just see it broadcasted everywhere daily. And that's the normal thing, you know.
that's the norm.
That's why I started out with us as talking about a missing vitamin. As you suggest, as soon as we start to understand this conversation, we now must look at every thought, every vibration, every substance that we're being fed as a possible way of subverting who we are.
Yes. Yeah, so this is fascinating. Then I would like to I'd like to say here, just because that is such a potent subject at the moment. When it comes to the discussion we're having in this missing nutrient that you're speaking of, in your experience, what is a good protection, a protection for people during this time? Because I think that, I mean, that would tie into this subject, because I think this subject has a lot to do with just the dance of opposites in general. I mean, we even have it in political teams.
Well, actually, Eve, it's wonderful the way Saraswati speaks through you. So you'll love this. That question, what is that vitamin? Day before yesterday, someone was talking about COVID-19. And I said, oh yeah, but you've got to get a good dose of Veda-Vid 108. Veda-Vid 108 is the transcendental virus that eats all other viruses, so they can't harm you. So what we're doing right now is considered to be, in the Vedic teachings, the ultimate in medicine, because the sound vibration, and we would culminate in Sanskrit if we had time, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
We'd start singing mantras and we'd go into that vibration and become it rather than just know it in our mind. Have you done that much?
Yes.
Every minute of every day since you started doing it?
And I can. That life permits.
That's right, exactly. I have a great story for you. Someone once asked Albert Einstein, could you give us a simple explanation of relativity? And he said, okay. He said, just imagine that a young man and a young woman who find each other attractive are having a conversation. And the conversation, the time goes by very quickly because they're both having such a good time. Then we put the young man on an electric stove and turn the burners on. Now how does time go by? Terribly slowly.
Yes.
And he said, so this is relativity. We're in this context of beauty, which should be our teacher, but the beauty is being so distorted, subverted, and damaged that has become our teacher instead of a true initiation and to stay in touch with the beauty at all times. Yes? Please explain.
Wow. Okay. So once again, I'm not probably qualified
Oh, you are.
to explain this. Wow. So, you know, this is almost more a part of a more advanced class, I would say, because when you start getting into this, you're looking at the principle of the Mahavidyas, and I believe we do have a few people here that are familiar with them. I saw Tara's beautiful face, and I know that she's familiar with them, but within that teaching of the Mahavidyas, these are 10 goddesses, for those of you who don't know, 10 forms of Shakti. And this is more traditional, okay? I'm steering away from kind of the the current world situation, which you answered so beautifully, Kavindra Rishi ji, because focusing on it, focusing on it as they want you to play into the fear. You're actually giving away every little ounce of your power and self-respect. I would beg all of you here not to give your self-respect to this. One of Shakti's names is Shri, which means it is a form of respect. I mean, it's a bad definition. There's really no English for that. But in essence, once we give that respect, the self-respect away by falling into fear, especially this brand of it, this specific form of it, you've lost your balance. You've lost your middle point. And balance is never an extreme. It's never an extreme. It's never way over here, way over there. It's in the sunrise and sunset, right? That's why that Brahma Muhurta, that time period is so important right before the sun rises. That's when those two forces meet. And that's really where the honey that we're all trying to drink, that cannot be described, that amrita, that's where that is. It's in that union of Shiva and Shakti. It's in that force of light and dark coming together. And the minute someone pulls your attention way over here to one or the other, you've lost the game. So with that said, the Mahavidyas, within that understanding of that study, there are a few of them. Dhumavati, who's seen as, let's say, a widow. I don't like, some of these terminologies for her. Once again, when you get away from the Sanskrit, you're dealing with sticky territory there.
Often problematic English.
You're dealing with a problem. So I'd encourage everyone to look into this on their own, and not have me describe it so much. But there's a few of these goddesses that deal with pollution. They call it pollution, or they call it it's like a smoke. It's like, where you can't see through. And these are sacred forces as well.
Distortion.
Yes, distortion, pollution, distortion, soiling, the dirtying of something. This is where the Agori sadhanas come from, which is to transcend aversion, which are very delicate, and I don't recommend anyone doing that without the proper guidance. But a lot of these paths come from the seeking of transcending some kind of this theory of relativity that you're speaking of. Our minds expect something from life. We only want beauty this way. We only want, like the boy burning on the stove. Of course, we don't want that experience. Of course, we want to remain engaged with the beautiful girl. Of course, we want that. But in order to really honor Shakti, and in order to really stay with her in the present, we almost have to be alongside the pollution and not allow it to pollute us, not allow it to take us from our center. In other words, to be in union with Shiva and Shakti is to meet them at that middle point. We're going to be surrounded so much by things that we don't like. And to me, the feeling behind reacting to that and saying, I want this and I don't want this, is one of the very things that make us feel so dominated by time.
So let's then talk about just 3 of these divine images: Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Durga,
Okay.
who are associated with creativity. I like to call it recycling, not destruction. And the proper maintenance of everything in its highest, best form. So these 3 are enough to get ourselves into this game, aren't they?
Yes.
Would you talk about them a little bit?
I think I'm unqualified. I'll
That's
do
why I asked you to do it.
I thank everyone for being forgiving to me because I'm describing something I experience in silence. So sometimes it becomes difficult to articulate and measure that. So if she's willing, I'll be able to articulate it. So Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati. So in Jyotish and Brihadara Shastra, once again, we have the Shri Shakti. And Parashara so beautifully says that when Vishnu is coupled with her, he's ruling or he's managing. This is the homeostasis, right? The body is almost always seeking this balance. This is kind of a dynamic state of balance. It's not static, right? So our body is always putting that which is out of balance into balance. Even when it's fighting an illness, it's always looking for that state of balance. That is Lakshmi. That is the rulership that he is describing. That is preserving. Okay, so then we have, which he refers to as Bhu Shakti, which Bhu, as we know, or Bhumi, is nothing but Mother Earth in some texts, but it's also the material. It would be Bhuvaneshwari in the Mahavidyas. But it would be most like Saraswati. That's what he's describing. I'm only using his because I'm ignorant. So he says, Rishi Parashara says, that when he's coupled, when Lord Vishnu, and he means the infinite Vishnu, not the isolated Vishnu, which some of you may get confused with this. So I'll
What?
have
More than one Vishnu?
there is one Vishnu, but you see it divided, right? And so bear with me.
I
So-
know, I'm making a joke because most people think there's only one Brahma, one Vishnu, one Shiva.
Yeah, this is I think an adjustment, right? So when Vishnu is coupled with Bhu Shakti, Rishi Parashara says that he is creating. This is the Saraswati and Brahma. It actually says that he becomes Brahma in that state. Then when he's coupled with Nil Shakti, who anyone knows what Nil or Nila is? Blue, what color blue? Nil Shakti, that is Durga. And in that state, he is, as you said, recycling. He is recycling. He's doing his Tandav Nritya, his dance of destruction, Nash, to destroy. And this is very necessary. This is without these three forces always in motion, there is no gyan, there is no knowledge, there's no vidya. Vidya is a measurement of that infinite knowledge. It is a personalization, a personality. So when we speak of Saraswati, she is in a way, when we're referring to her this way, she is a measurement of that infinite. Lakshmi, a measurement. Durga, a measurement. Yet these are all infinite forces that are very hard to, any of them can become the infinite ocean like that.
For
So
us, it's a quantification of that
Yeah.
infinite.
So that
In a way, it's science hidden in these stories.
Right.
yes, oh, absolutely. And they manifest in our bodies as well through speech. You ever think of the sound of our voice? It's divine. Speech, this is living Saraswati through our eyes. You know, we're seeing. So my teacher, one beautiful thing he used to say was that when we wake up in the morning and slowly open our eyes, it is Brahma and Saraswati that are slowly opening and creating our universe. As we keep them open, it is Lakshmi and Vishnu who are preserving our experience, our universe. And when we close them at night to sleep, or when we close them in orgasm, this is Shiv and Shakti in that destroying everything that we just experienced.
The petit mort, the little death.
Yes. So even though creation is happening through the union of male and female, let's say, even though creation is possible through that, it is also a complete forgetfulness of separateness, and therefore a destruction of that falsification of identity that look at our bodies. We're designed perfect opposites. Perfect. I mean, even the pupil of the eye is opposite of light. Right? The light penetrates the pupil of the eye. It's said the eyes are called Indra Yoni. A yoni.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically this Indra Yoni. The third, yeah.
Being penetrated by the rays of the sun.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. And Indra, who is a god, but it's Indriyas, of course, right? We get into a deeper.
So,
Yes.
so this then, Eve, you just described quantum physics.
Yes, it's all scientific.
It's the quantification of reality. So I thought I would take this story to an opposite direction just for a second. And it is the story of something that happened with Krishna and Radha when they were having their famous rasa dance. And when Krishna as an avatar came, avatar of Vishnu, he was trying to show us that there's an unseeable, indirectly perceivable, beyond quantum manifestation of this that goes beyond the limitations of matter. So the story goes that both of them made themselves very beautiful for that moonlit night. And when they finally came together in the midst of all the other gopis displaying for us all of these beauties of infinity, then at the full moon had risen and they looked into each other's eyes, and as they looked at each other, a kind of competition started to take place between looking and seeing the beauty, and the person looking would get so ecstatic that their beauty would increase. And then the other person would see their beauty.
No. Krishna would kiss
No, almost,
Radha.
not yet.
Oh, not yet.
No,
Oh, I'm
kissing
excited.
comes next. You got to wait for the kissing.
Oh, all right.
This is the foreplay. Each time they looked at each other, they got more and more ecstatic. So finally, Krishna leaned over and kissed Radha on the lips. And she went into a state of ecstasy that was so beyond anything that he could understand that there was no thing he could compare it to. So this is called the competition between increment and measurement. If you said that the universe is simultaneously unlimited and all-knowing, that the Supreme is ultimately unlimited and all-knowing, then this is the competition between expansion, unlimited, and knowing. When does it end? And what Krishna and Radha are teaching is, within matter, everything has an end. Beyond matter, this does not have an end. So it's said that Krishna couldn't understand Radha's ecstasy. He was stuck. So he appeared on earth as a human named Chaitanya with her golden skin color, but he being the one. And Chaitanya assumed Radha's mood so Krishna could taste the ecstasy that she experienced when he, Krishna, kissed her. On earth, we saw this as a mystic who could not control their ecstasy, who would go into states of ecstasy no one had ever seen or experienced. So this mystery goes in both directions. Down here explaining why and who we are, and beyond, gati.
I always find it interesting that they hide the science in these, what we as a Westerner would think, crazy stories. And sometimes unless we either A, take the time to really meditate upon these stories and they're revealed to us, or we have a guru, we never understand what the depths of some of these stories are in its scientific method. And I remember you once saying to us, why are all these crazy deities all over India? And Jeffrey says it's kind of like Disneyland, or the Indians just place these icons all over India so that when you look at one of these deities, it like opens up a whole programming language. So if you see Lakshmi or Saraswati or Ganesh or any of these deities, it's supposed to open up all of the secrets if you've been initiated. If not, it just, you don't see anything. And so I just want to say, grateful that you two have so many stories. I'd love to hear another story. I don't think you did Lakshmi. Let's hear a little bit about Lakshmi, because I know everybody goes to Lakshmi and they, oh, give me money. But I know that's just
Her shadow.
Oh, they would be rich if that worked.
yeah, of course.
Yes.
I think we need to be low. And with Sandy, to your point, that was a beautiful, it was an oral tradition.
Mhm.
And these stories are very important. They are nuclear energy, so to speak, within these little stories. They're powerful. And those who were not supposed to understand them did not. Now we have a lot of people very willing to try to expound on them, but this was a way of protecting the knowledge from, as you said, the uninitiated. And it either made itself clear or it didn't. And you weren't supposed to teach or understand it if that was the case, If you just saw it as, oh, this is just a bedtime story, good.
Yeah, go to sleep.
You probably shouldn't. Yes, exactly. But the entire Rig Veda has been studied by physicists because of this. So there's famous stories of it. The gentleman, I can't remember his name now, but he was known to study the Gita as well.
And
Schrodinger.
Schrodinger.
He was one of them.
Oppenheimer
As well. Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of them, this is, it's very potent. And unless you have an ear from it. Now, speaking of Lakshmi, this actually ties in. Because Lakshmi, I feel, is the hardest to understand as far as our intellect is concerned, because that is not her realm. That is not her realm. When you have Saraswati, that realm, that is her realm. She's known for that, for these measurements we're talking about, these various forms of Vidya. Saraswati herself is Mahavidya. She is this. I mean, if you look at Agastya Muni's hymn to her, she's worshipped as all of the forms of knowledge, both transcendent and, she's worshipped as Avidya and Vidya. So all the stages in between. So Saraswati, we can somewhat seek to define. Parvati or Durga as well, in some sense that she has her place in the Tantras with Lord Shiva. She has her place spoken about in a very clear way. You still need to experience these forces more than just talk about them. But
Mountains and valleys, those two.
yes, exactly. But with Lakshmi, we see her seated in the heart of Vishnu. We see her as almost something that's shown as needing protection and needing rescuing. Many times when she comes with Vishnu, when he comes as the avatar, she is the medium through which he does his work.
Sitaram.
Yes, Sitaram, Radhe Krishna. Even Varaha, when she takes the form of the vulnerable earth, which is to be protected. So all of these stories, in some way, it is the protector protecting the vulnerable. And I feel that, to me, Lakshmi is something we're losing the sacredness of in our society, because she is at one time vulnerable and humble, but her power is in that. Her power, Lakshya means goal, the goal. And if you see her, she's at the feet of Lord Vishnu, massaging his feet in many of the depictions. And it's almost like we're seeing this now as some weakness. Like if a female is to be rescued, or if she's vulnerable in this sense, we don't realize the power that that's given to the divine, to the purpose. It gives the divine a purpose, something to be rescued, something to be kept sacred, something to be protected, like a child, like something sacred, something to be veiled and kept away from. So there is a part of Lakshmi that is this very gentleness. Like one thing I would say is a good example is Uddhava.
Oh, love it.
Uddhava being sent to Radha.
Mm-hmm.
And he is a master intellectual. I mean, this guy is the highest philosopher. He learned from Brihaspati. He learns from Jupiter. You know, he can see the subtle energies, the subtle potency of Lord Krishna with his eyes. He can see the light emanating. He's an advanced yogi, if you will. He's invulnerable. He doesn't know about the power of vulnerability yet, the power of humility. He doesn't have that yet. Krishna sees this and knows. Krishna knows, yeah, sure, you're all knowing. I need to help you.
AKA a know-it-all.
Yes.
Nicest way. Now, come
In a
on.
sweet, loving
Yeah,
way.
he was wonderful.
The story is very beautiful because Krishna tricks Uddhava and says, oh, you know, so may I tell a little of the story?
Yes, I love the story.
Yeah, great
Please.
story.
So just to make it brief, so Uddhava comes in when Krishna is weeping. You know, Krishna isn't seen to be upset. He's disturbed.
And Krishna's a king at the time.
And Krishna's a king.
Dwarka.
Oh, he's
And Dwarka.
Lord Vishnu incarnate. So Uddhava knows this. He can see Lord Krishna's divine radiance. So to him, Lord Krishna is not vulnerable. He is a god. Why is he sitting here weeping? Why is he? So the only thing Uddhava can make sense of is that he's acting. That it's his game, it's his leela. That all of this is a leela. So he asks Krishna, he says, why are you weeping? And Krishna says, it's Radha, it's the gopis, you know, their tears are coming into me, you know, flowing into my heart.
I'm remembering them.
I'm remembering them. They're remembering me. I'm remembering them. They're longing for me. You know, this is their separation, the pain of their separation. And so Uddhava says, oh, you know, you're not tricking me, Krishna. I see the divine radiation coming from you towards them. Just give them the jnana, give them the knowledge, so that they no longer feel this unnecessary pain of longing. You know, they just stop playing this game with them. And Krishna says, really, I'm doing this. Okay. You know, he says, well, why? This is a brilliant idea. Why don't you go and teach them? Teach them this path of jnana, of knowledge, so that they no longer have this pain. You're right, this is silly. Go teach them. And they said, Uddhava says, well, you know, they might not believe that I came from you. Can I get a letter? And so Krishna, oh yes, of course. So he writes this letter.
Dear Radha.
He writes this letter and he sends it with Uddhava. And Uddhava is going, you know, not realizing that he's self-righteous. We've got to realize this is a jnani. I mean, he's
a great being, actually.
great
Best friend in a way.
He's an intellect beyond our understanding.
Yes, so it's not that he's not aware of the tricks of ahamkar, right? It's not that he's not aware of these tricks, but his light is so blinding, it's blinding himself. His knowledge is at such a point that he can't see something, the subtlety, the mystery perhaps that you were describing, that Krishna, when he kisses Radha, this is that point that Uddhava is missing. So he goes on his high horse to see the gopis and Radha with this letter signed by Krishna. And the gopis can get the scent of Krishna before Uddhava's even able to get a word out of his mouth. They know he's come from Krishna without him vocalizing it. When he pulls the letter out, they know it's from Krishna. They don't need to read it. They don't even care what's written on it. Each one of them wants a piece of it. So they take this letter and divide it. They rip it up and divide it between themselves. So Krishna's words are just washed in the ocean of their love. They don't care anything about what he wants to say. All they want to know is whether their Lord had remembered them. And so he just thinks it's absolute madness. He just thinks they've gone mad. He doesn't think there's any hope. And so he waits to be led into Radha, and the rest is history. Because once he sees Radha, he challenges her a little bit, but she's very vulnerable and humble with him. She begs him to beg her Lord not to take her pain. Not to take her pain, because that pain is his presence. And Uddhava just cannot make sense out of this. He can't make sense out of it. And so finally he sees Krishna sitting beside Radha. It is something that defies logic. It's not perfect. What would you call it? It's
Illogical.
Yeah, it's beyond logical conclusion.
is not about becoming an invincible warrior.
Mhm.
That's only one part.
Or a perfect genius.
A perfect genius. And through that experience, Uddhava loses his words. He loses his interest in them, and he becomes a musician. He starts singing the praises of Krishna. So when you had spoken about Chaitanya, one of the things that he had said is he says, just shut up and feed people.
Right.
So this is Lakshmi. This is to answer your question. This is the real wealth. This is the wealth, that wealth of devotion. And it eventually dissolves. To me, Lakshmi in a way is on a pedestal above what we can understand. Because once we realize her, we are at Vishnu's feet. That is not, it's almost, she is that which is to be protected, but she is invincible. Through her vulnerability.
Eve, thank you so much. And in the Sanskrit, lux became the Latin lux, light. So it is from you, we are feeling that light of Lakshmi shine out. And we're at the point where we're going to let everyone ask questions now.
I can't believe that time went. We've flown over an hour. I looked up and I thought, oh my goodness, we've run out of time. I want to take some Q&A. Oh no, we could listen another hour, and maybe we will.
15 minutes over.
Maybe we will.
But we're just getting warmed up. So thank you.
So if anybody has a question, you can turn on your videos right now and let me know. And we will take some questions from everybody. And the other thing we do like to cut these off at exactly an hour and a half, but if anybody wants to stay on longer, we'll do a hard stop, and then we will maybe take a few more private, more intimate questions after. So, Rosario, you have a question you want to ask first? Say to who are you directing it to, and your question.
Evie, namaste. It's a very pleasure and honor to talk to you because, it's not first time, and I know your wisdom and your angelic wisdom really touch me every time. Even when you spoke with the introduction, you spoke with the division between masculine and feminine. There is no sense. And you reminded me the story of Birinji sage. They want to not worship Parvati, but only Shiva. It was impossible. And you made also the image of the Rotra Stotam, where actually got me to wake up Vishnu. everything you say is full of meaning, and you speak like the Mahabharata is on your voice, on your words, and it's really, I mean, I'm so touched. So I know you're an astrologer, and you have a lot of wisdom. So I have two questions. Usually I always ask you one question. One first question is more material, and is when will share with everyone your knowledge with the book, with the website, or anything else? And the second one instead is back to the astrology. You talk about masculine and feminine. So my question for you is like, why do you think there are 27 Nakshatras? And if they are male, female, why they are even? There is not the match for all of them. How do you see this?
I do have a website that I'm putting up to answer your first question I will be issuing just 10-minute videos daily starting in September. And I will have people subscribe. I'm not going to do YouTube because I just find too many people are interested in questions I don't want to answer, like why I look a certain way a certain day. Okay. So, it's a waste of time, and that's not why we're here. So I will do a daily panchangam, and that's what I plan on focusing on, which is to go into your next question. There are 28 or so days of the moon. Nakshatras are the wives of the moon. And so that's this very simple answer I would ask you to contemplate. So these are just the daily cycles of the moon, passing through the fixed stars. These nakshatras are very important in Jyotish. If you overlook them, you will not understand Jyotish. It is crucial. Even the panchangam that I'm going to be covering, too many of us are dwelling on Rashis. Oh, you're Simha Rashi or Leo, you're this, you're that. That is beautiful, but it is not the essence. It's a structure. You're dealing only with the bones and you're not fleshing out the body. So in Jyotish, we have the Kala Purush, which is the time person, and each one of these little separate portions of Jyotish make up a different feature on that body of the Kal Purush. So nakshatras are a crucial part of that. They're all technically female, so to speak, but they are given masculine and feminine genders and yonis, masculine and feminine animals. And the one you asked about that does not have a partner is Uttarashada. Uttarashada has no partner, is only a mongoose, is the yoni, the animal. So when you're going into compatibility astrology, especially advanced compatibility astrology, you want to be very careful with Uttarashada, actually. And Abhijit, or Abhijit, is the other nakshatra. There's an old temple in South India. I would encourage all of you to find it on YouTube. Perhaps I can send Sandi the link. And it has each one of these animal yonis for the nakshatra. And this was used in pairing, because the yoni just means womb, right? So it was used in pairing in compatibility astrology, maybe not putting a buffalo with a tiger. And if you do, you need to understand what you're doing.
What kind of critter you'll get.
And what's going to happen to that buffalo?
I sometimes remind people, I said, astrology is so revealing, they can even tell what kind of anatomy you have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you don't want to put a mouse with a bull, things like that. Literally, it's literally like that. They weren't ashamed. I think we need to lose all that shame around sex, actually, and have that as an open conversation, because we'll all be happier. We'll all be happier and more comfortable with the divinity within the material. Because material, if everything is divinity, it's silly, silly and separate. So on that subject of Abhijit, what I was saying about this temple is that all of the nakshatras are shown as animals, except for Abhijit. shown as a woman. A Shakti, a goddess, not a man, is shown as a woman in this temple. It's the only one that's not an animal. So it's a mystery. So Sandi, may I send you that link so everyone can see
So,
it?
yeah, I'll put it in the chat and everybody will get it. Mhm.
Thank you, Rosalia.
All right, who has another question?
And only one, not two.
Marissa or Joe?
Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
Hello, Eve. I don't know if you remember me. We met at the Sedona
Oh,
Vedic
can I
conference.
forget a face? I never forget faces.
My wife, Marissa.
Hi.
More than a question, just a statement. Thank you so much for speaking today. And your words hold so much weight and wisdom. And I've learned so much from you. And when Jeffrey read my chart, he conveyed to me that I would learn so much from the feminine, from where my Venus is placed, and that the feminine would open doors to me and I would be very receptive to their teachings. So as a practicing Joy Tashi, I've learned so much from you, and you have helped me become more humble, which has been one of my greatest lessons from all my speed racer Magha energy. So I just really want to bow to you and to everyone. As you're not in an ashram, you're not being taken care of, you are in the material world surviving like many of us, in your discipline, in your dedication. And as you spoke in Sedona, this is a marriage, and you are, and Jeffrey G are all in. And I look up to you both so much. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great question, Joe.
Yes.
I love you. All right, Tara, did you have a question? Just your beautiful face. All right. Anybody else? Don't turn off your video. It makes me smile to see you. Okay, Diane, let's hear from you.
I've had a similar sentiment in as far as I don't want women to act like men, and that's one of my biggest gripes with the feminine movement. So how do you recommend to women to, I hate to use the word empowerment, it's overused, but how do we move in a masculine culture without becoming masculine and losing the feminine?
Who is
So-
this for?
I'm sorry.
Who are you asking?
If you could address that, Eve, because you were the one that talked about that.
Yes, yes.
Eve. That's for you, Eve.
This is a very intimate question for each of us as women. Just as the Nakshatras are all different animals, each woman has a different Shakti at the forefront operating in her awareness. And for one of us, it's not going to be the same for all of us. Some of us may be a lion or a tiger, while the other may be a deer or a serpent, or, these are, one very important thing is not to lose that intention and that dignity, and to check in with the inner voice. I almost want to encourage every woman to slow down, because our receptivity is our yang, our vidya. All of us, our bodies are built receptive. And if we are not meeting what's coming at us with a receptivity like water, we have a tendency to, it's almost like we feel that natural vulnerability, which is being exploited. And instead of receiving and being able to give an intelligent response back, or a medicinal response, we come at it with a blade. And that's okay. It's just not going to get the result that we want. It's going to turn into war. We don't want war. We want understanding. We want medicine. And we want to all be able to bloom. There's no reason for everyone not, and for us not to, we're going to become so frightened of masculinity, we're no longer going to have it in our culture to celebrate these beautiful men and let them be warriors, let them protect us, let them be who they are, Mars, Sun, you know, they let them be this. We're going to become so frightened of them or competitive with them that we are going to lose Venus, and we're going to lose what makes us have joy. So we're running a risk of losing something irreplaceable.
And this is what, just to add to what Eve said, these are the vitamins that we're talking about. So the personification of these beings is so important because they are persons. We're persons because they're persons. It's not that we grant them personality. It's that we are made of as a composite of their persons. And when you understand this, they become your mentors, not ideas, not archetypes, not something lesser than us that we use to get something. They become someone we have a conversation with, someone we're constantly listening to, someone who's a role model, someone who teaches us how to be. And this is exactly what Eve is pointing out, that the embodiment we're in is a chance for us to learn from that perspective. But these devas and devis are the medicine and the minerals and the vitamins that will slow us down, that will give us patience, that will give us wisdom. And so thanks, Eve, for that lovely
And I have a practical solution for this, if you don't mind. I feel like half the population is male, half of it is woman, just for a generic. If each of us women can educate ourselves in relationship, and if we can only just influence one man and inspire him to be noble and wise and dharmic, then that is an amazing effort and reward sort of that you can do this lifetime. If we are the mothers of these boys and these men, it starts with us. We can't blame anybody but the feminine divine, that we are not empowered to instill these qualities in our men. And as Eve said, when we know the characteristics of the man, we should be able to discern if he is the warrior protector or if he is the Brahman, the educator. We need to know what these qualities are and empower our men to be the greatest dharmic warrior or teacher or Vaishya as they can possibly be. So take it on, women. Find a man, a friend, a lover, and inspire him.
May I say one more thing to this? Because this is profound, Sandy. Thank you. And Jeffrey, both of those are Kavindra, Rishi, this is good. Because this is a very important point for women as well with each other. With everything going on with female empowerment, I find many women cutting each other down. Mm-hmm. If a woman is more passive or her style is more vulnerable, other women may attack her thinking that she is not maintaining self-respect. We have this tendency to really batter each other. And it's not our fault. It's just been woven in this story that we've been fed. And one thing I would like to remind everyone is looking towards history. I mean, look at the stories of anyone familiar with Sherazade?
Yes.
I'm sure people are familiar with the Arabian Nights tales. It's not actually called that in Arabic, but she is someone who led with absolute vulnerability, absolute submission, even to the fact that she may even get murdered the next day.
Every day, yeah.
Every day, for the man she loved. Who can say that's not courage? What is she supposed to go in there and chop his head off? And, it's like that's a different story. There are those stories as well, like Mother Durga. She comes and she obliterates someone. And that is a place too. But as females, I say that one may have the virginal purity and the other one may not, and that's her self-respect. The other one's purity may be her self-respect. So I would encourage women to allow a form of diversity in that vidya, because just there are men are, to Sandy's point, are diverse as well. And we're not all paired properly, but when we are, that kind of female is going to uplift a very specific kind of male, and we need to allow that to happen. I mean, yeah.
I think we need to do a show on compatibility.
After Sandi and I were together for a couple of years, given our common backgrounds in both yoga and psychology and various things, we put together a seminar called the Ultimate Relationship Seminar. Ultimate. Using the principles of Jyotish, the principles of yoga, the principles of being the Atma, the principles of yoga. And our motto for this seminar is two things. You have to go to driving school for 6 weeks to get a driver's license, and in 10 minutes you can get a marriage license. What's wrong with that picture? Number two, our motto for the seminar is, I shall always cherish my original misconceptions regarding you. We are not trained in life what makes anyone think we'll succeed in relationship if we do not understand the categories and forces and beings behind life. So, wish we had more time. Eve, we're at 1 hour and 30 minutes. We could go 4 hours and 30 minutes as easily. I'm sure everyone agrees. It's been a joy and wonderful pleasure and benefit and privilege to have you here with us. Thank you for sharing as you have.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being online. If you have to go, have a great day. Call somebody you love.
Thank you, Eve, for bringing her here with you. And it's been a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank all of you.